Have you guys ever encountered somebody, maybe a newlywed couple or something, who say, "Man, we never fight, we never argue"?
Yeah.
I've encountered this too, and I'm like, what?
There were some people, I wouldn't say they were friends, but they had been married for literally 6 months, and like, yeah, the honeymoon phase will never end for us, and it took everything in me not to laugh in their face.
What did you do?
I just kind of nodded.
Yeah, I knew a guy, worked in ministry, and he'd been married for probably 5-6 years, and he says, "Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, Brian. We just don't fight." And I didn't know what to say because it felt like that wasn't true, but maybe it was. I mean, have you heard someone say that, Lauren?
Yeah, maybe it's just like you have a different definition of what fighting is. Like maybe they mean they're not yelling and screaming at each other, and that's what fighting is in their minds, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
They have arguments maybe. You know, they disagree on things, but maybe they're not yelling and screaming at each other.
Yeah, and I'll screw up the quote, but I've heard a psychologist indicate, and this is where people get it all wrong, right? That silence can be just as violent as outright rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there's been times I literally am intentionally giving Eddie the silent treatment. I'm like, stick it to the man. Give him silent treatment.
How's that work for you?
It doesn't work. I always give in.
Well, and probably the maddening part is he might not even realize
No,
it.
he doesn't.
Because you're quiet already in some respects.
He's like, no, I'm not. Not at home. I never stop talking.
Really?
Hmm.
Wow. Watch
Just
out.
stream of consciousness.
That's cute.
Well, and so what? You know, somebody. Well, we never argue. Well, but they might be passive aggressive. They might take silent treatment. So, is it reasonable to say that every married couple, and I don't like the word fight, argues?
Exactly. Yeah. Or disagrees.
That's too light for me.
Oh, okay. So it's somewhere between fight and disagree.
Because disagree could be like, you want chicken tonight? No, I would like beef. You sure about that? I would prefer chicken. No, I want beef. I mean, that's like disagreeing. Sure. Fights a real word. Like,
it's just a little intense.
Sarah and I have had fights, not fist fights, but we've raised our voices at each other. I'm not going to lie.
It's an argue, not a fight.
Yeah, so it's safe to say everybody's done it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
Have you guys had to come up ever with rules for fighting? Arguing?
We have. What we've found is sometimes we will be arguing about two completely different topics and getting mad because the other person is not understanding our point and we're not even on the same page. So new rule is we take a step back and like better articulate why we're mad, and sometimes we find the other person is mad at something completely different.
Yeah, you know, Sarah and I did a generally ineffective pre-marriage class years ago, but there was one great thing. This guy talked about setting up ground rules for arguments.
Okay.
And he didn't say that there were any universal ones. It's like you have to develop them. For us, one of the big ones early on was absolutes.
Yeah, always and never.
We cannot use absolutes. And if somebody uses one, we have to stop and go, wait, you just said never. Because you know how that degenerates.
Yep.
Never? Now I'm going to give you a list of times that's wrong. Right? That's what everybody does. So you guys actually had to talk about that, or you just stopped using it?
We talked about that from the beginning because it was also in our premarital counseling about using always and never. And so we decided we wouldn't do that. And we do the same thing. If it comes up, it's like, okay, well, you just said always, and that's not true.
And you both agree enough on that rule that you can kind of go, okay. Yeah. Most of the time, Eddie, you do it. Is that what you do?
Or a lot of the time.
More times than not.
We all do stuff like that. It's like, okay, yeah. So any other ground rules for fighting you guys have come up with?
I like for myself I need to take a break sometimes.
Yeah.
I need to compose myself. I need a few minutes to either calm down, compose myself, or let my emotions catch up.
Well, and that's a really good one. It's part of a list of 5 things healthy couples do when they fight. Relevant Magazine had this, and it's take a minute. I had a hard time with that at first because I want to resolve things now. I'd get so anxious about discontent or arguing that I want it to be resolved now. And Sarah needs time to think. I'm a verbal processor. She needs time to think. So our marriage counselor helped us work through this. The secret for us was setting a time to reconvene.
Oh, that's good.
Because I was like, I need a minute, Brian.
Are you ready?
Like forever? How long?
Right.
Are we ever going to talk about it again?
60 seconds later, you're back. Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
let's go.
Or, I mean, the greater fear being, is the real ploy here, and Sarah's not like this, but here's my fear. Is the real ploy here to just not talk about it anymore?
Never talk about it. Mm-hmm.
And so the counselor was like, what you do is you say, I need a
That's
break.
good.
I need 30 minutes. Let's meet back here in 30 minutes. You guys, it works.
Yeah, it makes me really anxious too. Eddie's a very thoughtful person, needs a lot of time to think, and it'll make me anxious if it's too long.
Have you guys tried setting the...
No, but that's a really good idea.
Yeah, and it sounds really needy or something, but I won't be able to use the space
I'll
to
be
actually
spiraling.
collect myself. Yes, I'll spiral,
Yes.
completely spiral if I don't know we're reconvening.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only
No,
one
yeah, I
that's
feel
like
the same
that.
way. Yeah.
I mean, because we would have those times where Sarah even will shut down in arguments, and so she can easily fall asleep. So when we were early married, she'd fall asleep real quick because fights would happen at night, and I would just spiral. How can you sleep? Wake up!
That's
We're
me.
arguing.
That's me.
I think that's another good rule is don't, like, whenever possible, don't fight at night because you're tired. And so things are going to
Your
be
emotions are just
more intense. Like I heard someone, this I think was early on in my marriage, say it's okay to go to bed angry because if you stay up, you'll get angrier. And when you wake up, you'll be refreshed.
Well, but what's that? See, people mess up that passage, though, right? Don't let the sun go down on your anger or whatever it is. And if I remember correctly from Dr. Rydell, like it's like it's not a prescriptive thing, right? It's more like a general guideline.
I think I've kind of interpreted that more to mean like don't push it aside.
Mm-hmm.
And like in this case, we're not pushing it aside. We're just kind of we're just setting a time to reconvene, like you said, Brian. Because if you stay up really, really late, you're going to get tired. You're going to lose your filter. Things are going to get worse and worse and worse. And now it's 4 a.m.
Yeah, and Sarah and I have actually had to use it for that one. We should go, listen, I'm really tired. Can we talk about this tomorrow? If we don't set a time, I will not sleep that night.
Yeah.
There will be zero sleep for Brian.
Yeah.
I've gotten better as I've gotten older with some of that, but the time really helps me. Trying to be honest with you, because we all agree that healthy couples, they do argue.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, when you're newly married, pretty regularly. And I always thought that the longer you're married, that you'd eventually just diminish arguing to never arguing. And that's just not true.
Well, it
You
does.
never argue with Dana?
This is my point. It does diminish.
Yes.
It doesn't go away, but it does diminish partly because a lot of the little things have been ironed out over time, and partly because you realize it really doesn't matter. If she wants chili tonight, let's have chili. I'll have steak some other day.
Couldn't a reason maybe as you're married longer, the fights diminish because some people just stop caring and they stop just voicing their opinion or
Yes.
bothering?
That's a real danger zone because it's just like, what's the point, right? Because I always lose or they always do this and I can't. I know we're not supposed to use absolutes, but you're right. It could be a
I'm just
danger sign.
Too tired to fight him, her anymore.
Yeah. But I think to Ron's point, Sarah and I would, with good counseling help and time, we argue much less. But you're never going to delete it.
Right.
Because we're people, right? Some other tips from Relevant Magazine. They have 5 things healthy couples do when they fight. One of them, assume the best. The guy writes, this is the only advice I give to newlyweds because it was by far the best I ever received. I can interpret my wife's, did you wash the car? As her nagging me or as her genuinely trying to understand if it's been done. If I assume she's nagging me, bad things will follow. But if I assume the best and think, for example, that she's trying to plan out her day, I avoid hurting her and possibly causing a fight. This is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, human nature, our sin nature, causes us to assume the worst in others. And this is where we've talked about benefit of the doubt here all the time. But I believe 1 Corinthians 13, when it says, love hopes all things and believes all things, that's benefit of the doubt. We've got to extend it to our spouses.
Yeah, when we had children and our first really didn't sleep. I don't know how he survived. He just was not a good sleeper. And so you're delusional in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And we had so many months of saying things that we didn't mean because you're so tired and you're so frustrated. We had to make a rule of whatever we said in the middle of the night doesn't count. It's not real. It's not real.
I really like that, Lauren.
Because I know that's not what your heart actually means and how you actually feel. We're just delusional and really exhausted and frustrated. And so whatever we said, we didn't mean it. And we don't have to talk about it again. We know we have an agreement. We didn't mean that. And we're just moving on.
What a good way to handle that. Because I remember those nights where, and even days where you're so sleep deprived, You say something and you expect the other person to understand you're just tired. But when they say something to you, it's like the end of the world.
Yeah.
You what? You feel that way? No, you have to extend benefit of the doubt. So good. The next one would be recognize context. The guy says, when healthy couples argue, he writes, bringing up the wet towel that was left with abandon on the bed again, perfectly fine. Bringing it up after a 13-hour road trip, not cool.
Ooh.
Recognize the context of your circumstances and know when you need to table an issue, or at least go into the issue recognizing that you aren't at the best place to deal with the conflict. Early in marriage, it's hard to pick this up, but there are good times and bad times to bring things up.
Yeah, you don't have to say it when you have the thought.
That sounds like you have that same problem.
Yeah.
I have that one.
You don't have to say it right away just because you think it.
Yeah.
Hold on to it.
But see, how do you manage to let yourself like not be totally consumed by it? Like, I'm waiting. I'm not saying it.
I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet.
It's hard though, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there are good times to bring up stuff like that. You know, to say, I just want you to know the wet towel in the bed, it just drives me a little batty. And here's why. How can we work on this together? As opposed to, there it is again, wet towel on the bed. Which I probably
shouting at the towel.
How about this one? Here's how healthy couples argue. Swallow the bitter pill. When you're the one who messes up, you're faced with two choices. Number one, you can defend what you did and push blame away from yourself by pointing out other issues, all just so you don't have to stomach the idea that you hurt people and failed. Or you can do something extremely hard. Just swallow the bitter pill. You messed up and you hurt your significant other, your spouse. Own it.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
I think it's the better option because in the long run, that will teach them that you're open to admitting you're wrong. Rather than if you don't, if you're always defending yourself, well, then they're going to think it's hardly worth discussing anything with him or her because they never think they're wrong.
Yeah. Well, and I did something. You're all going to think I'm the worst person ever, but I've learned. There was a long time where I would regularly say, or she'd go, "You said X, Y, and Z, and that really hurt my feelings." I go, "Oh, well, I didn't mean that. It's not what I meant."
I'm sorry you felt that way.
Yeah.
Now, in my mind, it was like, I need us to understand that, I need you to understand that I didn't mean that, so it really shouldn't hurt you. That was my logic. That's terrible. It is like looking at someone and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way."
That's a you problem.
You shouldn't be so sensitive is essentially what that means.
Yeah.
So it's horrible.
Right.
Have you ever, is that just a Brian thing? Or have you experienced that in some respects?
Yeah.
Do you say it or do you receive it?
I think I probably am the first to own up to my things in my marriage. Take my husband
You
a little
said
bit more
that
time.
really, I like how you said that. That was very loving.
And I mean, that's not news to him. I think it was his sister was getting married and they were asking us like, "Oh, who does this first or who does that first?" And he admitted I'd be the first to own up.
No, but you've probably spent time analyzing why it might take him a little bit longer than you.
Yeah, he is just a more thoughtful person than I am. And he just needs time to settle his emotions and really think about the whole situation, what actually happened.
It's not that he's being, stubborn or rude.
No.
He just takes more time.
Yep.
And that's that's something for people like you and me, to be honest with you, who might be able to come to that conclusion quickly and stop saying I didn't mean it and really own it. You got to understand that just because someone's taking time doesn't mean they're being rude.
Yeah, his emotions follow his thoughts. Thoughts come first and then emotions. Mine is emotions and then thoughts. So he'll get around to it. He just has to think about it first to get to that emotional level.
Ron, do you struggle to own up? I don't think you would, but
not as much. I used to. And the situation you laid out there is one that I would have struggled with and maybe still do, because it's like, well, how else would I have said that that your feelings wouldn't have been hurt by my logical statement, which is so obviously right. So, you go through that and you're like, okay, I've hurt her feelings, but how else could I say that? So
I've gotten trapped in that too. Yeah.
You just have to throw that away and say, maybe she'll never understand your logic. But, if you want a healthy marriage, you're going to have to deal with the fact that you hurt her feelings.
Yeah, because you want to say something like, okay, well, I can change that a little bit if you can be less sensitive. How about that?
Yeah.
It's a great
We'll
way
meet
to
in the
resolve
middle.
conflict. How about that? I actually, I've come to realize that apologies, even if you add to this, apologies in conflict in marriage have 4 elements to the recipe. First one, name what you did. Say it out loud. Not like oh, my bad. That's like not an apology, nor is it even owning behavior. It's like going, I said this to you. And then the second part of the recipe for an apology, that was wrong. Like you actually say it out loud. I said this or did this. It was wrong. Third part, I'm sorry. Fourth, will you forgive me? Like, I think that's powerful because I think our human nature tries to get us to somehow get out of an actual apology.
Mm-hmm.
Our pride lets us do it.
That, and I think it's really hard for us to accept when we've accidentally hurt the person we love the most. So I think we go on the defensive and we try to pretend it didn't happen because we're just too ashamed and too hurt that we hurt them.
Yeah, but it's also, as you're saying, I think if you really preach the gospel to yourself, you got to believe that you're going to regularly hurt somebody that you love because you're a sinner, a wicked sinner who needs Jesus yesterday, today, and forever. And if you remind yourself of that, of course you hurt your spouse. Of course you do on a regular basis because you are a sinner. But you've got to do the name it, say it was wrong, say you're sorry, and ask for forgiveness. It's a humbling exercise, but I think it's necessary.
Plus, if you ask for forgiveness and they answer and say, yes, I forgive you, you've taken away their right to stew on it. So if they want to be mad about it for a long time and, oh, well, he's no good, and well, they can't do that because they've forgiven you.
That's on them.
Yeah, it's great stuff. Thanks, team, for being so honest. That's why I love this team. We're willing to be honest about these things. Far too often in Christian ministry or on radio, people be like, you know what you need to do is just, in the middle of the fight, stop and pray.
And play Chris Tomlin.
Sometimes I don't want to.
Can you imagine if you're super mad at Eddie and he goes, Lauren, let's pray. What would you do?
I would probably just shut down, just be quiet.
Then why don't you pray? We need to pray for you. That's what we need to do. Not that you shouldn't pray. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we're trying to
When
be
you're
realistic
angry,
here.
yeah, it's hard.